Hello everyone and welcome to the Nutrify Today's C-Suite Sumplex. Very interesting panel discussion on the emergence and the landscape of vitamin mineral supplements across APAC and India as well. I'm KK Krishna Kumar, your anchor for this panel discussion. Pleasure to be with you all. And I have with me a very esteemed panel. To my immediate left is Abhijit Boshok. He comes with close to 2 decades of experience in management consultancy and also more importantly with focus on healthcare and pharmaceuticals. Close up after that is Vinay Penamaglore, who is actually an entrepreneur, good to have an entrepreneur on the panel, who has actually set up his own business, SMHP Pharma, that was around 1992 and has built it into a very vibrant organization. Samir Desai, to my right, is Vice President Commercial and Marketing, Align Technologies, Singapore, and he comes with tremendous experience across consumer as well as pharma, particularly consumer, in big names such as Mundi Pharma, as well as with Abbott, GSK, just to name a few. That tells you what he brings to the table over here. And last but not the least, we have Mr. Dhaval Khatkar. Dhaval, of course, is Senior Vice President, OTC Business in Glenmark, and brings with him a wealth of experience across OTC products in big companies like Heinz and several other big companies across OTC, across FMCG products, and now OTX and OTC in a pharmaceutical company. Good evening, and gentlemen, welcome to this panel. Great pleasure to have all of you with us over here. If I may start with a man who actually saw the industry from outside, right? And we have Abhijit over here as a management consultant with EY and several other companies like IQVIA. Now, everybody's talking of a huge surge ahead in nutraceuticals, right? Did you envision that probably half a decade back? Is it going on lines with the way you guys saw it from outside the industry?
So very interesting that you picked up the word half a decade, because if we go back half a decade, it takes us to 2019. Of course, nobody remembers 2019 because it became COVID-19 and we got into 2020. And a lot of things changed at that time. One, the general preventive wellness got drummed into all of us because of the pandemic. What that meant at a very, very simple stage is people started looking for zinc supplements online, vitamin C online, and so on. What they then realized is a lot of the pharma products, I'm not taking names deliberately, were actually off the shelf. They were out of stock. And then people started going deeper and deeper into the choices that came up on Amazon. And then you notice, oh, there's a wealth of other brands hiding there. And many of these were the D2C brands. Now today, as a management consultant, I've done diligences of such brands and such D2C companies for pharmaceutical companies. Today, as a BD lead inside a pharmaceutical company, I very often look at these brands as potential entry points into the consumer stroke OTC stroke ODX world. So that way, at least for me, it's kind of been a smooth flow from the harder period of the pandemic to actually seeing these as opportunities today.
Yeah, I mean, the one I was trying to look at is in terms of a high port vertical for healthcare industry across. Does it kind of concur with the kind of thought processes you guys had?
We did. It did. See, go back another year, say 2018, sure. Ayushman Bharat came in. And over time, pharma companies also realized that a lot of the leeway that we had, I won't say free run, but on the branded generic side, is a little under threat, be it from price control, be it from the way you take products into the market. And that leeway is still there in OTC, OT, not as much OTX because there's still that RX component, consumer health products. So in a way that it's another lever for growth for a pharmaceutical company, even if we are still driving those sales through the doctor route, through the prescription routes.
Vinay, I'm taking a cue from what he said, and he's talked about the leverage of the gap that one sees or the delta one sees in generic products. I remember some time back you had also made a mention saying that the pipeline in CEs is probably eroding over a period of time, and somebody has to look at what you fill it from, and the biologics and biosimilars may not be the only answer. There could be other spaces as well. And is nutraceuticals the space that one turns to?
Well, again, we go back to good old COVID-19. I say good old because more or less it's becoming a memory. But when it dawned upon the human race...
Hopefully it's only a memory now.
Well, it looks like that because things are going back to the normal pace.
Yes.
Well, looking at it from that angle, first and foremost, I'm a hardcore pharmaceutical guy. Have been for the last 27 years before COVID came. COVID reminded us that there was no human or any kind of drug in the vicinity that could deal. Not a vaccine, not a drug, nothing was going to stop COVID, and that too for a long time. That's when I think, like Abhijit pointed out, that options outside of pharmaceuticals was something that could be an answer to the human race. And that's where nutraceuticals comes easily to mind. Yes, again, looking at pharmaceuticals and looking at the next generation, the generic drugs have become commonplace. Biologicals, biosimilars, MABs, they're high-end, highly researched, very expensive. So nutraceuticals to me comes as something, and being Indian, going back to Ayurveda, how our forefathers lived on nature and things that came out of it. I look at it as something to look at with more seriousness. Something as an entrepreneur, I would like to, even at this point of time, look at very deeply. And I think in the last 5 years, 7 years, as I hear and now today see it, it has potential. If we are talking about $1 million of business, I see the potential of it going billions. Just from listening to industry, making enough research on my own, but I've also got my own thoughts on nutraceuticals and how they can work synchronized with the current drugs that are in the market, because there are dread diseases which just can't be treated and left to the patient because of quality of life. We have to think about longevity. If you keep a cancer, for example, if you keep a cancer patient alive with these kind of drugs for 2 years, what's the quality of life? Is there a supplement that can make him come back to 60%, 70%, even 90% of a functioning, still valuable to the human race, to industry, to whatever, that is his passion or her passion, then there is hope. But if he's just going to live for the next 2 years from one session of chemotherapy or whatever treatment is ongoing, he's just, pulling on.
You mentioned two very interesting things, longevity and quality of life. I'll come back to you in a moment, in some time. Going across to Samir, if I may bring you in, we talked about certain segments of COVID-19, the illness factor and so many other things, and nutraceuticals coming in that segment. As a man who's been in the consumer space for a long time, in the OTC space for a long time, wellness is a big segment of nutraceuticals. Now, how do you see this entire space moving forward? Much bigger than the illness segment where you have a supportive care, a convalescence, longevity, as Vinay was talking about. Does the wellness segment definitely seem far more attractive?
I don't know if it's far more attractive, but it is equally attractive, right? And the question is, what products do you fit into that? It's as both of them talked about, you've got COVID, which brought in the entire awareness around health. The challenge, what you talked about in terms of quality of life, right? It's the challenge is, I think modern medicine's always focused on treatment after problems occurred, and we've never focused on prevention. And I think COVID brought in a lot of awareness around prevention. And prevention, wellness is a core part from a prevention perspective, because if you live healthy, you live well, both mentally and physically, then your quality of life definitely improves. So what you can do in that space is quite critical. If you look at the biggest developments that are happening, sleep is a huge part of progress, right? So not just products helping you sleep, there are devices, there are apps, there's multiple things happening in the sleep space. If you go into the Global Electronics Show, Consumer Electronics Show in the US, the largest section right now is on sleep. So that's how it's progressing, is becoming consumer. Even the likes of a Samsung and LG are getting into sleep.
In fact, you talked about sleep. That's a big segment in, but also there are other segments like sports nutrition.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a massive segment, if you ask me.
Absolutely.
And day-to-day lifestyle nutrition.
Yeah.
That is another big segment. And also look good nutrition. Why not?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, everybody wants to look good, and everybody has a right to look good.
Yeah.
So that's the paradigm I was checking with you.
Yeah.
You do see huge potential in that, right?
Oh, absolutely, no question about it. And a lot of it again is living a better quality of life, right? So wellness is all around that. And so you get these products, but when combined with the right lifestyle and the right stuff from a mental point of view as well, I think that's where the sweet spot is.
If I may come to you, Dhaval, I mean, you've seen enough of the FMCG segment, you've seen media segment, you've seen the pharma segment, the OTC segment, so you've got a good gamut of all that. Now, taking what the other panelists have said over here, now, one were to look at nutraceuticals in a pharmaceutical space. You're now heading the OTC segment for a pharmaceutical company. So one were to look at the nutraceutical segment in a pharmaceutical company or in a pharmaceutical industry. Okay, how do you see that moving forward? Does it sound very, very promising? Are the head honchos of pharmaceutical companies now getting a mindset saying that's going to be a big revenue generator for me over the next decade or so?
So I think I'll just double click on what Samir left. So it's the wellness part is becoming a bigger opportunity because people are also taking interest in their own self-care post-COVID. People are wanting to be healthier, better, and proactive healthcare has come into the consideration set. Now, of course, there is a long way to go. Companies are also kind of riding up, and you've seen so many new D2C brands coming in, trying out new nutraceutical products, and people are trying them, taking them. Pharma companies are also coming in. Not only that, you will see a trend that FMCG companies are buying OTC companies of global OTC companies, whether it's a Unilever buying, P&G buying, or Nestle buying, because they do see that as an opportunity where health and wellness as a trend is likely to grow. So all the bets are on the table by FMCG companies from angle that the margins are better than traditional FMCG for OTC or nutraceutical business. So therefore, this is one future area for most of the FMCG company to invest in, and global realignment has already happened. It is happening in India also. So that part I'm saying, consumer trends are also moving in the similar direction. And I think you will see more and more product innovation. Unfortunately, that has not yet moved as fast, but the way consumer goods have seen innovation over the years, you will start seeing more product innovation and mainline consumption happening of healthcare, because the Gen Z, the millennials are wanting to take care of their health and wellness in general. Is awareness is good. Sugar levels and salt levels are dropping in the products, as you are seeing, whether it is junk food. Government is becoming more and more active. So general trend around us show that this will become a category, or rather is becoming a category to invest in from consumer side, from company side, from regulators side, and overall you will see a good momentum building in the years to come.
It's a bit of an irony, is it? You said sugar levels are going down. Across the world, any happy event, you say something sweetly, right? You share some sweet. Today, sugar has become mankind's biggest enemy.
Yeah, very
It's
true.
a bit of an irony, actually. Yeah, continuing the discussion you were having, we saw pharmaceutical companies getting into the nutraceutical space step by step. Now, there seems to be an added momentum level. I mean, a lot of them are actually looking at having a separate vertical for nutraceuticals. Do you say more and more of them entering this bandwagon of having a separate vertical for nutraceuticals and pushing that, investing into that?
I don't see that honestly yet. I feel that, vertical is a very tactical decision. It requires manpower, it requires structure. Those are really organizations already have enough structures and people and divisions in place. The idea is to optimize the existing manpower, the talent and the infrastructure that you have. So I don't see divisions, but I do see more of focus as in the mind space of the organization, this as a category to invest in the future. So I don't see divisions coming in, because division is not necessarily the only currency where they show interest. There are many other ways of buying brands, investing in brands, growing brands, investing in talent. So these are also the right decision formulation. Most importantly, evidence-based formulation, because especially pharma companies are very trying to bring in evidence-based nutraceuticals, so that there is whatever promise you're making, you're delivering that promise rather than just giving a nutraceutical product. So I think more of that will happen, then divisions will happen.
Greater focus. You gave us a big soundbite. I'll come back to you in that in a moment. Now, you also mentioned about newer products coming in at rapid pace, and we know across the world, whichever industry it is, okay, if one talks of an exponential growth, or even one talks of a very rapid growth, there has to be innovation. There has to be mandatorily new products. When we talk of new products, completely new, innovative products. Now, having seen the industry from the outside, again, I'm asking you, Abhijit, do you see a good pipeline of genuine innovation in nutraceuticals over the next few years?
Very, very difficult question. There would be a lot of nutraceutical CDMOs possibly in this building right now, for that matter.
Yeah.
I think most of the innovation, at least in India, is still very incremental.
Value-added kind of thing.
It's value-added.
Differentiated
and it can
products
be
and
as,
stuff like
as
that.
basic as
Yeah.
adding a elaichi or a badam milk flavor to a children's drink, which otherwise would have been vanilla or chocolate.
And some
That's
added
one
benefit towards
one
that.
side of the spectrum.
Sure.
The other side is, how do you ensure that adherence or compliance on the patient side, or the consumer side in this case, is better. So for example, using a gummy format to make sure that the kid takes that daily vitamin pill. Or remember, there was this chocolate form of vitamin. This is live and from my own household. What ultimately happened was I ended up having those chocolate bars and my kid was still on dairy milk.
You said that. I know of people who actually have the meal replacement chocolate bars after having the meal as well as a decent. But these kind of things are happening. But I think all the more that this is an evolving space. And towards that, I think we'll touch upon a point a little later on with you, particularly, Samir, in terms of educating the average consumer. That's going to be important. But see, we talked about the new product pipeline. When across you've been associated in Philippines and to a large extent in the APAC segment. How much of innovation do you see actually happening across the board? Because a lot of interesting companies working on a lot of these products.
I wouldn't venture a guess into innovation because I'm just trying to get to know the industry myself. But there are products already in the market. For instance, a stroke patient today, the neurologist would give the regular chain of post-operative or post-treatment. There is a specific one. I wonder whether I can take names, but I'd rather not. But there is a supplement that comes from Singapore. That's gathering ground, that's gathering speed, and that's given along with the usual allopathic medicines for those on the early stage of recovery. And if it works well, it's continued as a maintenance. Similarly, for diabetes, there are certain products which work well with certain diabetics, type 2 diabetes. And depending on a doctor's being convinced, it can also take off. For cancer, I would be careful to venture on anything called as a treatment, because cancer cells are the ones which, to date, none of them have been tamed to the point where other diseases, and maybe taking a step too early, But how do I see it? Something that Dhaval said about treating nutraceuticals as a vertical. Today in the India segment, I would think that the Indian companies with surplus monies and surplus manpower, surplus or manpower that can be used more, the talents can be used more, they can work simultaneously along with what they're selling as the pure front-end allopathic drugs on nutraceuticals. One advantage, the pharma companies already have maybe a couple of thousand, couple of hundred med reps in the field. That same team can talk to the same doctor without having to worry about the marketing aspect. He is not prescribing, he is not asking you to prescribe, he is just telling you, doc, this patient has whatever he has, why don't you try this supplement? That can be used as a marketing tool. So you see how you can align these two without them actually competing with each other. There's one way of doing it.
Whilst that's a great point that is brought forward, Samir, from a OTC standpoint, from one who goes to the consumer, Dhaval just spoke about the evidence-based nutraceuticals, right? Whilst that may be a very important area for pharmaceutical companies, and whether it's in the doctor's chamber, taking a cue from there, then taking it on to other segments like OTX or OTC, purely OTC, one were to look at OTC nutraceuticals, do you see the need for evidence-based nutraceuticals? Because people in today's world are definitely far more aware, because everything is available at the click of a button and they're able to read more. So more questions coming up. Will it work? Okay, it's worked in some part of the world. Will it work in my country? Will it work with me and stuff like that? Do you think the need for more evidence?
Of course, I think that's really the backbone of how this industry is going to get built, right? It is going to be evidence-based, and the reason why the industry was not growing in the past was because it was all hearsay. We knew it worked, but there was no documented evidence, and especially if you look at traditional Indian therapies, a lot of them just didn't get mainstream acceptance because there wasn't published evidence. So definitely that's going to grow. But also at the same point of time, I think the need to educate the consumer in a genuine and ethical manner is quite critical. Because as nutraceuticals grow, you'll have a lot of players who are not in the evidence-based space, making quasi-claims, very misleading claims, and which consumers, yes, they're very well informed, but a lot of them are also gullible. And if you put in enough money behind a claim, people will definitely believe it. So I think you'll have two streams. You'll have the evidence-based companies that are really pushing out good products with great evidence, and there'll be other companies who have the money but don't have the science, who want to push out pseudoscience and trying to push that as well. So I think that's going to be the fine balance there.
I like that word you use, yeah, pseudoscience. Probably get a sense of where you're coming from. But when you talk of evidence-based nutraceuticals, you said that's the way forward. I tried to say that it'll be evidence-based on science alone, or evidence backed up by a good amount of clinical trials. So do you see CTs also going up, or purely science being brought to the consumer, he being educated more and more on science?
So there are certain products and claims where clinical trials are possible, and definitely I think that's going to grow. But in certain spaces, clinical trials are just way too expensive, right? You want to do prevention studies in terms of immunity and stuff. You'll need to do a 5-8 year, the number of sample size, so it's going to be prohibitive. So in those cases, genuine science will come in and you think that it's going to work and you will have the experience that it will work. But clinical trials definitely will go up. But those clinical trials will be funded by companies that have the money. So you'll see both coming in. But it's going to be a fine balance of what is actually clinically proven, and also as we're seeing, right, not everything works for everyone. So that's the challenge in clinical trials as well, right? So
that's what you said is a very pertinent point. Honestly educate the consumer so that he's able to absorb and apply his mind into seeing what will probably work for him, and also take it along, forward. Yeah. Now coming to the one interesting thing that just crosses my mind when we're talking of evidence-based nutraceuticals, etc., etc. There are several segments one can see that which are probably predominant, like he spoke about sleep, and one talked about lack of energy all the time, as globally that's been called the cat syndrome, tired all the time. And the third is we just said some time back, and at the start of this panel discussion also, dermatological, if I may say, cosmeceutical, right? That's the right word maybe, and more to do with your skin, look good, feel good, and present yourself better and stuff like that. So having been associated or currently being associated with India's biggest dermatological company, do you see that that is probably the biggest segment, the skincare segment across the board as we move along, and maybe 2 or 3 other segments, Dhaval?
So, in my view, for nutraceutical for skincare, hair care, has started seeing early roots of acceptance. But I feel it's a long way to go. Reason being, consumers are creatures of habit. Now, today is the first port of call for a skin or a hair is a product application and not a nutraceutical product, because that requires going to a dermat regularly, understanding. You can't just pop in a pill, right? I mean, people have to take an advice from the right person depending on your skin type. I think he mentioned, because my body is different than yours, and each of us require a direction from the physician or a dermatologist to consume what we are supposed to consume, rather than just popping something. So it will take a little while, but I do see that trend increasing because people are taking interest in searching about it. Today it's a very early stage where people are searching on Google about this thing. This is early green shoots happening in the category, and I think in the next 5 to 7 years you will see an early adopters coming in and trying out new products, etc., and hopefully helping. I mean, especially 2 areas it's working: hair growth, where people are popping in pills, as well as skin, as you rightly pointed out. It will grow, but it will take a little while in my view. And also the role of a dermatologist will play a very critical role in this. How do they see? Does it help? What kind of products are coming out? Are they helping? How much of claims, ethical product? I mean, what kind of science-backed products are they? Or are they just gimmicky? So all of that will have to come together. So that's one thing. But in other categories, I think where it's diabetes, which I think you spoke about in other areas, that definitely will be a faster adoption because the need is there. There are advice happening. The ecosystem is already there. In this case, it will take a little while for the ecosystem to come together.
You spoke about a couple of interesting things, and you spoke about expert endorsement. And does the management consultant in this group have any data that anything with expert endorsement or medical doctor endorsement as a nutraceutical has sold better?
Absolutely. In fact, I'd noted this as point 3. Evidence,
oh, did you? Okay.
Evidence-doctor. See, from a pharma company's perspective, the sales generation happens on the prescription. For a nutraceutical product to share space on the pad with pharma products, there has to be solid evidence that is presented in a regulated form, which is largely the clinical trial. But as you pointed out, it may not always be feasible. So in some cases, you do see real-world evidence taking that form. And now with guidelines like the UCPMP in place, a lot of the promotion will also get driven more into the scientific domain. And I see a lot of RWE picking up in future, not only on the pharma side, but definitely on the nutra side. So that's one. The other, I'm sorry, I'm just going back to the point on innovation.
Please. Yeah,
something that we missed out.
Yeah.
There is a lot of innovation that is coming up in bringing in natural ingredients or traditional, say, quote-unquote Ayurveda also in some form.
Yeah, heritage meets science,
in a modern format,
right,
which in pharma we would call a novel drug delivery system, NDDS.
Sure. Yeah.
So you'll have slow release caffeine being taken before workout. You have honey made from coconut, which has possibly a better glycemic index, whatever, than pure honey or sugar. So again, these have to be backed by evidence. You will have to have a bio availability profile or something. You'll have to have that nice graph printed out and shown to the doctor. So I think the expert will have to play a bigger role.
in all these things. And coming back to you, Samir, since he did mention about that, from a consumer standpoint, do you also believe that the consumer feels better if it's been something that's endorsed by a doctor? He can take it for a longer time?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
As in, there's more than enough evidence to show that people, when they start off with a doctor recommendation, are far more loyal than if they start out through consumer advertising. And there's a huge, so the pharma players, most of the players in this building today, their entire strength is in the doctor anyway. So when you go with a doctor recommendation from a OPEX point of view, from a P&L point of view, you've got a far more efficient P&L where it's doctor recommended versus you spending direct to consumer, which is far more expensive. So if you've got an expert recommended consumer preferred product, then you definitely spend a bit of money on consumer advertising. The doctor recommendation plays a massive role. And also the advantage is, the moment a doctor recommends for a certain amount of time, the pharmacist sees the recommendation coming in, the pharmacist starts endorsing the product because they say if the doctors are recommending, it must be a good product. So they start endorsing it. So that's a very cost-effective go-to-market strategy which plays to the strength of the players in the healthcare space.
And one customer to the other, lip service, oh wow, that works huge. We know that, don't we?
Absolutely.
Right. Veena, if I may finally bring you in, a couple of things that work in my mind. You know, we were talking of all this potential of the industry, and you've run your own business successfully for a long time. It's a vibrant company that you're running, which means you've got a lot of product approvals and gone through that entire process. A couple of areas. One, we've been talking about, I know none of us has an answer over here, probably nobody has, but in what direction does one move? If one were to look at where does one draw a demarcation line between a nutraceutical and a therapeutic pharmaceutical, and also what could be some thought processes to ease up regulatory processes?
Well, it's much easier to register a nutraceutical, I'll put it that way. Okay, that's good in terms of the commercial side. How quickly can you bring it to the market? The flip side of it is you're bringing in something which you know will or may, you're not sure, will treat somebody over a dread disease or a lifetime disease, and it's going to take a while. If you combine the two, if you bring in the pharmaceutical, again I bring my doctor friend in here. Why? Because the doctor friend already knows the side effects of modern medicine. Or of, for instance, me, I'm a diabetic, I've been taking a bunch of medicines. I know the damage being done to my kidney and liver. My every 3-month or 4-month blood test allows the doctor to see what's going wrong, how do I slow this down. If a substitute with a nutraceutical or a maintenance with a nutraceutical can help to either slow down or to strengthen either the liver or the kidney or whatever, they're the right person. And like what has been pointed out by the panel, the prescription coming from a doctor gives confidence to the pharmacist, gives confidence to the patient, and you realize there's a balance. And they'll be compliant. If he's taking something for diabetes, he's going to take the supplement with that. But if he's taking a supplement, there's no guarantee that he'll be convinced to take modern medicine. And that's how you bring in the two together. That's what my vision is. Not compete one with the other and,
let one be an ally of the
absolutely.
other and let both grow. And there's enough scope for growth for nutraceuticals.
Absolutely.
On that positive note, gentlemen, thank you very much for this absolutely riveting, vibrant discussion that we had. And suffice it to say, ladies and gentlemen, that we believe that there's a huge scope for nutraceuticals as we move forward across the illness as well as the wellness segment, and in illness, of course, in supportive care, longevity, in wellness, across several paradigms that we talked about in just terms of looking good, in sports nutrition, and also in the maintaining on a day-to-day life nutrition. But again, over here, get some good expert endorsement, get that case moving along, get that reassurance, and also educate the average customer on what he's getting and how he should go about taking it. We get a few of these things in the jigsaw puzzle in place. We've got a huge nutraceutical industry waiting to really propel itself forward to great heights. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be with you on this panel and bring forward the positive note on nutraceutical industry over the next decade or even more than that.